Nobody expected her to walk away. Not the armed men guarding the doors. Not the politicians hiding behind smiles. Not the wives in glittering gowns pretending they didn't know what kind of room they were in. And especially not Adrian Kane, the man the city of Port Crescent, New Jersey, feared more than its storms. He rejected her with one sentence. And she accepted it like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear it. That was the moment the entire room realized something was wrong. Because women who stand beside kings don't usually leave quietly, unless they are not leaving as victims, unless they are leaving as a threat. Port Crescent stories, where power isn't loud, it's patient. The ballroom was sealed off from the rest of the hotel like a secret vault. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked down on Port Crescent Harbor, but the view didn't make the room feel free. It made the room feel like it owned the city. Everything about the space whispered control. Black marble floors, soft gold lights, quiet waiters who never made eye contact. A table sat in the center, long enough to feel like a courtroom. At its head sat Adrian Kane, early 40s, clean-cut, calm. No flashy chains, no loud suit, just a dark jacket, crisp shirt, and the kind of stillness that made men swallow their words. Around him were the people who survived by orbiting him. Victor Raines, his lieutenant, the one who never smiled. Councilman Holland DeWitt, pretending he didn't know why he was here. Mara Kane, Adrian's public-facing wife, eyes like polished glass. And the friends, the kind of friends who only exist when money and fear do. Standing at the far end of the table was Nina Vale. No jewelry, no glamour, no performance. Just a simple dress and a quiet confidence that didn't belong in rooms like this unless it had been owned. Nina wasn't just a woman around the boss. She was the one who did what nobody saw. She translated threats into solutions. She turned chaos into schedules. She made sure the knives stayed pointed outward. For 3 years, she'd been Adrian Kane's silent support system. And tonight, Adrian Kane ended it. Nina's voice didn't shake. You asked for me. Adrian's gaze didn't soften. I asked to settle something. The room leaned in without moving. That's how powerful men listened. Still as statues, hungry as wolves. Adrian took a slow sip of water like he had all the time in the world. You're leaving my circle, he said. Effective immediately. Nina blinked once. Because of Mara. Mara's lips tightened in a polite smile. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Adrian's voice stayed level. Because you're no longer useful. The insult was clean, surgical. A few men exchanged small glances, waiting for the part where Nina begged, cried, promised to do better. Because that's what women did in their stories. But Nina didn't. She didn't even defend herself. She just nodded, as if he confirmed something she'd already known. Understood, she said. The word landed wrong. Too calm. Too final. Adrian's eyes narrowed. That's it. Nina met his gaze. You've made your decision. And you're just going to accept it. Adrian asked. Nina's expression didn't change. Begging doesn't change a man's mind. It only teaches him he was right to discard you. Silence crashed over the room. Even Victor Raines, who had killed men with his hands, shifted slightly, uneasy, because Nina wasn't reacting like someone being dismissed. She was reacting like someone being released. Nina turned and started walking. Her heels clicked on marble like a countdown. One guard reached for the door handle, unsure if he was allowed to open it. Then Adrian's voice cut through the air, quiet, dangerous. Let her go. The doors opened. Cold night air slipped in like truth. Nina stepped into it without looking back. Adrian watched her go, his face unreadable. But something inside him moved, an irritation he couldn't name. Because Nina Vale wasn't supposed to leave that room with her spine intact. Outside, Nina didn't rush. She didn't run. She walked 3 blocks like an ordinary woman leaving an ordinary event. Only when she reached an empty side street did she stop. She looked up at the harbor lights and exhaled slowly, not in heartbreak, but in calculation. Then she pulled out her phone. Not to call a friend. Not to call family. Nina called someone from her past, a man who had once sworn he'd never speak to her again. He answered on the second ring. "Vale," the voice said. "I was wondering when you'd finally choose yourself." Nina's eyes stayed on the street. "I need protection." A pause. "From Kane." Nina's voice dropped. "From everyone." The man exhaled. "Then you're about to start a war." Nina's mouth didn't smile, but her eyes hardened. "No," she whispered. "He started it when he thought I was replaceable." Nina returned to her apartment. Small, plain, forgettable. The kind of place nobody would connect to Adrian Kane. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and opened a hidden floor panel beneath a bed. Inside was a slim laptop wrapped in plastic. She powered it on. A folder opened automatically. Kane ledgers, port routes, payoff lists, insurance. Nina had been building it piece by piece, quietly, patiently, because working close to power taught you a rule. The man who controls the narrative controls the outcome. She didn't want revenge. She wanted freedom. And now, she wanted leverage. Her screen filled with names, dates, transfers, dead drops, enough to bury Adrian Kane, enough to save herself. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You left too clean. That means you're planning something. Don't make me chase you." Nina stared at it for a long moment. Then she typed back full words. "You already, Because Adrian Kane wasn't just watching his empire. He was watching her. And he had no idea the woman he dismissed was the one holding the map to everything he owned. Adrian Kane rejected Nina Vale. She walked away without begging. And she opened a laptop filled with secrets that could collapse an empire. Now, the question is simple. What happens when a mafia boss realizes the quiet woman beside him was a real lock on the door? 3 days after the ballroom, Adrian Kane sat in his private office above a seafood warehouse on the docks. On paper, it was Kane Imports. In reality, it was a nerve center. Victor Rain stood across from him with tablet. "Shipment didn't arrive," Victor said. Adrian didn't look up. "Which one?" "The one from Halifax." Adrian's eyes lifted slowly. "That doesn't happen." Victor swallowed. "It did." Adrian leaned back. "Then fix it." Victor hesitated. That was new. Fixing it might not be possible, Victor admitted. "The dock supervisor says Customs flagged it." Adrian's gaze sharpened. "Customs doesn't flag my shipments." Victor looked uncomfortable. Someone made a call. A call. Adrian felt the first flicker of something he hated, uncertainty. And when uncertainty entered a criminal empire, it spread like mold. That night, in a different room, different men whispered. Not about Nina. About the missing shipment. About frozen accounts. About a police unit suddenly patrolling areas they'd ignored for years. Mara Kane caught one of the whispers and snapped it in half with her stare. "Stop talking like frightened children," she said. But even Mara's voice didn't sound fully convinced. Because fear wasn't a feeling in Kane's world. Fear was a currency. And someone was inflating it. Nina wasn't hiding in a motel. She wasn't crying in a friend's apartment. She was in a secure townhouse outside the city, protected by a man named Elias Crown, a former federal financial investigator who disappeared years ago under suspicious circumstances. Elias wasn't soft. He wasn't kind. But he was precise. "You don't leak information," Elias warned her. "You drip it. You control the temperature." Nina sat at the dining table, her laptop open, files arranged like chess pieces. "I don't want blood," she said. Elias nodded. "Good. Blood brings heat. Heat brings cameras." Nina scrolled through bank transfers. "I want my name clean. I want out." Elias pointed at the screen. Then you don't destroy him. You corner him. Nina's eyes stayed calm. And what do I do if he comes for me? Elias leaned closer, voice low. Then we let him. Because men like Cain don't realize they are losing until they are already in the trap. That same night, Adrian Cain received a call from a banker who used to answer on the first ring. Now the banker sounded nervous. "Mr. Cain, we receive inquiries about several accounts." Adrian's voice stayed smooth. "From who?" The banker hesitated. "I can't say." Adrian's fingers tightened around his glass. "You can say." A long pause. "Federal level." Adrian went still. He didn't panic, but his mind moved. Who could reach federal level? Who had access? Who knew enough? Then Victor Raines, like an idiot, spoke a sentence that should have been spoken years ago. Nina used to handle all this. Adrian's eyes snapped to Victor. "Say that again." Victor cleared his throat. She knew where all the accounts were routed. She kept the clean books clean. Adrian's jaw tightened. That irritation from the ballroom returned. Bigger now, more dangerous. He hadn't discarded a woman. He discarded a system. Adrian didn't call her directly. He sent someone else, a voice Nina recognized instantly. It was Landon Pike, Adrian's lawyer, the man who smiled like he owned forgiveness. "Nina," Landon said warmly, "Adrian wants peace." Nina's tone stayed polite. "Peace would have been letting me leave without messages." Landon chuckled. "You're smart. You know what you have." "And you're smart," Nina replied. "You know what he lost." Landon's voice sharpened slightly. "Adrian can make this easy." Nina's reply was soft as a blade. "So can I." Later that night, Elias Crown showed Nina a news clip on mute. Police raids, port inspections, a councilman being questioned. Elias tapped the screen. "Someone's moving." Nina stared at the images. "It's not me." Elias nodded slowly. "No," which means someone else smelled blood. Nina's chest tightened. "Then Adrian's rivals are circling." Elias leaned back. "Welcome to the part where your leverage becomes your target." Nina's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, a picture of her apartment building, taken from across the street. Under the photo were 5 words. "You're not as far as you think." Nina didn't flinch. She simply closed her laptop and looked at Elias. "He's coming." Elias stood. "Good." Nina's eyes narrowed. "Good." Elias smiled without warmth. "Because when he comes, he'll walk straight into the truth." And the truth was this. Adrian Cain wasn't just losing control of Port Crescent. He was losing control of himself. Adrian Cain didn't sleep much anymore. When he closed his eyes, he saw Nina's calm face, so the way she'd accepted dismissal like it meant nothing. That wasn't normal. That was strategy. Adrian sent Victor Raines to find her, not to negotiate, to confirm one thing. Was Nina running, or was Nina planning? Victor returned with nothing but frustration. "She's gone," Victor admitted. Adrian's voice stayed quiet. "No one is gone." Victor hesitated. "We checked her apartment. She hasn't been there. No activity." Adrian's eyes were cold. "Then check everyone who ever mattered to her." Victor nodded, but his face betrayed doubt. Adrian watched him leave, then turned to Mara. "Did you push me into this?" he asked. Mara didn't blink. "I pushed you to remove a weakness." Adrian's mouth tightened. Nina wasn't a weakness. Mara's expression sharpened. She was a woman who knew too much. Adrian stared at his city through the glass. For the first time, he wondered if Mara, his polished, perfect, public wife, understood real power at all. Because real power didn't care about appearances. Real power cared about control. And Nina had been controlling more than Adrian realized. Nina didn't leak the ledgers. Instead, she sent a single anonymous tip, small, surgical, to a rival group known as a Bishop crew. Not enough to start a war. Just enough to make Bishop's men start questioning Adrian's strength. A rumor is a match. In the right hands, it becomes a wildfire. Within 48 hours, Bishop soldiers tested Kane's territory. Small pushes, minor provocations. Adrian responded, but every response cost him money, attention, time. And time was what he couldn't afford. Elias Crown arranged a meeting in daylight. A neutral diner outside Port Crescent. No bodyguards inside. No weapons on tables. Adrian arrived first, calm as always. Nina arrived second, alone. Not trembling. Not scared. Adrian's eyes searched her face like he could find the betrayal hidden in her skin. "You look well," he said. "Nina Saturday, so do you, for a man whose empire is coughing." Adrian's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" he asked. Nina's voice stayed steady. "I want out. I want a new identity. And I want you to stop watching my life like I'm your property." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "You are mine." Nina's eyes didn't move. "No," she said. "I was your blind spot." For the first time, Adrian's composure cracked, not into rage, but into something worse. Fear dressed as anger. "You think you can threaten me?" he asked. Nina didn't smile. "I think you already know I can." Adrian's hand tightened on the coffee cup. The ceramic creaked slightly. "Why didn't you beg?" he asked quietly. Nina blinked. "Because if I begged, you'd feel powerful." Adrian's eyes darkened. "And you didn't want me to feel powerful." Nina's reply was soft. "You were powerful when you protected me. You became pathetic when you dismissed me to impress people who fear you." Adrian stared at her. It hit him like cold water. Nina didn't leave because she was hurt. Nina left because she was disappointed. That was unbearable, because disappointment meant she'd expected more. And Adrian Kane didn't like being measured. Nina slid a small envelope across the table. Adrian didn't open it immediately. "What's that?" he asked. Nina's voice remained calm. "Proof." Adrian's face hardened. "Proof of what?" Nina met his gaze. "Proof that if anything happens to me, everything you've built collapses. Not partially. Completely." Adrian opened the envelope. Inside was a single printed page. One page only. A list of names. Politicians, bankers, police captains. And one line circled in red. "Mara Kane, offshore transfer routes." Adrian's eyes narrowed. He looked up slowly. "You have Mara in your files." Nina nodded. "I have everyone, including me." Adrian went still, because if Nina had Mara, Nina had leverage Adrian never saw coming. Adrian left that diner with his face intact, but in his chest, something was breaking, because now he understood. Nina wasn't just a woman who walked away. She was a woman who could decide who survived the fallout. Adrian Kane did what powerful men do when they feel cornered. He tried to regain control through force. But force was the one thing that made Nina's plan unstoppable. Victor Raines received the order at midnight. "Bring her," Adrian said. "Alive." Victor hesitated. "That'll ignite everything." Adrian's voice turned razor thin. "Everything is already ignited." Victor assembled a team. They traced signals, watched roads, followed patterns. But Nina wasn't careless. Elias Crown had predicted this. When Victor's men approached the town haze, it was empty. No Nina. No Elias. Just a TV on a loop, security footage of Victor's team approaching. A message was taped to the screen. "You're late. That's the point." Victor's stomach dropped, because late meant Nina had moved first. Adrian returned home to find Mara waiting in the kitchen. Her posture was perfect. Her voice controlled. "You're spiraling," she said. Adrian stared at her. "You knew." Mara's expression didn't change. "I knew she was dangerous." Adrian stepped closer. "And you were routing money offshore." Mara's eyes flickered. For the first time, she looked human. Adrian's voice lowered. "You stole from my empire." Mara swallowed. "I secured my future." Adrian laughed once. No humor. "You secured a coffin," he whispered. Mara's face hardened again. "You can't touch me. You need me." Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then said something that chilled the room. "I used to think I needed you." He paused. Then Nina left, and I remembered what need actually feels like. Nina didn't expose Adrian. She exposed Mara. Not publicly, Not to the media, to Adrian's allies. One file delivered to 3 men who mattered. It didn't ruin Adrian. It forced Adrian to choose. Because now, if Adrian protected Mara, his allies would see him as compromised. If Adrian punished Mara, his public image shattered. Either choice weakened him. Nina didn't want him dead. She wanted him unstable. Because unstable kings lose their thrones without a battle. The final meeting happened on a pier at dawn. Gray sky, cold wind, empty harbor. Adrian arrived alone. Nina arrived with Elias, but stayed a few steps ahead, as if to show Adrian one truth. She wasn't hiding behind anyone. Adrian's voice was calm. You could have asked. Nina replied softly, I did, in 100 small ways. You ignored all of them because it was convenient. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're doing all this because I rejected you. Nina looked at him like he'd asked the wrong question. I'm doing this because you thought rejection would break me. She stepped closer, and when you realized it didn't, you tried to punish me for having dignity. Adrian's eyes burned. He leaned in. You want out? Fine, but you don't get to walk away clean. Nina nodded once. You're right. Then she handed him a phone. On the screen was a live video feed. Councilman DeWitt speaking to investigators, naming Mara's transfers. Adrian went still. Nina's voice stayed calm. You have a choice, Adrian. You can keep chasing me, or you can say what's left of your name. Adrian stared at the video, then at Nina. Is this what you wanted? He asked. Nina's answer was quiet. I wanted peace. Adrian laughed bitterly. This is peace. Nina's eyes were steady. For me, yes. Adrian's composure cracked. Not into shouting. Not into violence. Into something rarer. He whispered, You were the only person who never feared me. Nina nodded. Because I knew you weren't a monster. You just played one. Adrian's throat tightened. And now... Nina's voice didn't soften. Now I know you'd rather lose your soul than lose control. Adrian stared at her, then slowly stepped back. He looked out at the water, jaw clenched, breathing uneven. The Mafia Boss, who had stared down guns and prison threats, finally snapped. Not with rage, with realization. Because the woman he dismissed wasn't his weakness. She was his discipline. And without her, he was just a man holding a crown made of glass. Nina turned to leave. Adrian spoke once more. Will I ever see you again? Nina didn't look back. If you do, she said, it means you didn't loan. She walked away into the morning light, and for the first time in Port Crescent, the silence didn't belong to Adrian Kane. It belonged to Nina Vale.